harnessing generative AI to transform financial services, a hugely important topic. And to show some insight into that, Georgina Bulkeley, Director of EMEA Financial Services Solutions, and chatting with Georgina, Derek Freel, UK Head of FinTech at Google Cloud. So would you like to come over and take over?
Great.
Are we comfortable?
We're good.
Are
for the
we
last
ready?
Fireside, so no pressure.
Everyone comfortable?
Yeah.
Well, it is a packed room. It is exciting to be here. As advertised, I'm Derek Freel. I lead our FinTech team in the UK. And welcome. And welcome to, how many people are streaming? 200, 300,000 people out there? So if you're online, great to have you join us as well. This is only a 25-minute session, and the countdown has started.
I know.
It's a heck of a topic to get through, quite a mouthful. I don't know if 25 minutes is quite enough,
We will do our best.
Let's get some intros going. So, Georgina, tell us about yourself. Tell us, more importantly, what are you focused on in your role, and what focus areas are there around AI that's keeping you busy?
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you very much for the opportunity to join the team today at FinTech Live. It's great to be here. My name is Georgina Bulkeley. I'm a Director of Financial Services at Google Cloud. I've been at Google Cloud for about 5 years, and I focus on AI applications with our largest customers across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and also support our global payments business. Prior to working at Google, I spent 23 years in banking, so I'm a recovering banker. Most recently, I was the Chief Operating Officer for NatWest at the Retail Business Bank and a board member on their FinTech. So I've worked a lot with financial services and understanding how to translate technology into business needs and bring business strategies to life with our tech.
Fantastic. Well, we're lucky to have you here. I know you were just at Cybos and you were running a round table this morning. You're very busy and very engaged, so I'm very excited that you're here today for this moment. We're having the Fireside Chat. Does anyone know where the term Fireside Chat originated from? Anyone? Okay, so this dates back 92 years to when President Roosevelt actually was going through a very challenging time during the Depression, 1933, and he had his first fireside chat then. And the reason he called it a fireside chat, and this was over the radio, right, was because he wanted to calm the audience, calm the people of the U.S., because there was a depression, and he was talking about the Emergency Banking Act. We don't have time to talk about that in much more detail, but 92 years later, here we are for our fireside chat. We're not dealing with those challenges, but on the flip side, we're facing a lot of opportunities, a lot of exciting opportunities in Gen AI. So that's where I'd like to start, if I could, Georgina. And what are the most strategic opportunities that Gen AI presents for financial services today?
Great. Okay. Well, I mean, everyone is thinking about the hype and the excitement and how to use AI in both a deterministic and a generative way. So what I'll try to summarize is the main use cases that we see with customers. Some of those will resonate more than others with you, because the most important thing is to apply these tools to your strategic business objectives. It's lovely to do things that are intellectually interesting. It's much more important to use the technology to drive tangible business outcomes. That's thinking about how to utilize the data as the fuel for your business, how to optimize the customer experience, and how to tap into markets. And particularly in FinTech, I always think it's opening up new markets and addressing customer needs in a new way, which has been brilliant examples from a lot of the speakers today. So we tend to bucket this into 3 core need areas for our customers, Derek. The first of which is growth. So many of our customers work with us and they say, actually, we need to diversify revenue streams. We need to think about new ways to increase cross-sell to our customers, to hyper-personalize those experiences. All very easy words to say, very difficult things to do. And generative AI in particular, I think because of its multimodal nature, really leans into that opportunity. So when you're thinking about that multimodal engagement with your customers, historically that might have been I used to run call centers, so call centers, that might have been written communication, but actually how can you do that in new ways? Using videos, using photographs, using different forms of the way the human brain is naturally activated and learns. So hyper-personalization is a huge area, and that can drive revenue and drive growth within businesses. The second area, which will come as no surprise, and many people have used this example today, is effectively in operational efficiency. And even the last panel was talking about call center AI, document AI, document processing. I was reading a McKinsey report last night that they're estimating, 40% of all of the kind of middle back office operation costs should be able to be removed with generative AI applications. That's really crushing paper out of processes and taking some of those things, which we'll come on to, from a much more manual intervention in a business to using technology effectively to free up time. Right, so exactly probably where most people start, actually, because it's non-customer facing, so it's deemed to be less risky. And then the third area, which is fascinating, which also there's a number of companies here today in that space, is in terms of risk and compliance applications. Now, we've focused on this a lot at Google Cloud. So using these technologies for reporting, for risk simulations, I was with the Bank of England this morning, actually, for quant simulations, and actually also security. When you think about all these really advancing security risks, you can also use the technology to identify new patterns, new anomalies in your data, and try and get ahead of some of those new threats. So I would say those three areas: think about growth, think about cost efficiency, and think about risk management.
Very interesting. Thank you. A lot of different areas were covered there.
Yeah.
Is it the general consensus that we're at the very early stage, or are we midway through this journey? On an earlier talk, one of the moderators was talking about how Gen AI is in the Gen AI spring, but then he corrected himself. It's not the spring. We're still just about to put down the Christmas decorations, for example. Or in Google speak, one way we think about the Big Bang, and we're in minute one of the Big Bang. That's where we're at with Gen AI. So is it safe to say do you concur with that it's still early days in our journey with Gen AI?
I do think it is, but if we bring it to life with some practical examples, I'm very practical by nature, so I always think that really helps. So one of our customers is Starling Bank in the UK. Okay, you'll all be familiar with that. And they have actually using our generative tool, Gemini, customer facing. So if you're a Starling Bank customer, you can go into your app. Spending intelligence is what the feature is called, but you can ask questions in natural language as you normally would if you were calling someone or if you're in a chat bot, but it will let you interface with your transactions to ask these kind of questions. And that's it's a UK first application of Gemini. Monzo also uses our services for data analytics. Revolut uses us for the hyper-personalization. So actually, for the cloud native companies, Derek, they are well in beyond testing, and they are into those revenue generating opportunities. Do I think there is much, much more to activate in terms of moving from a single application into probably what we'll come on to talk about, so a multi-agentic workflow, of course, but there's a lot to get around that in terms of all the frameworks and the ways to do that in a safe way too. So I think we're probably in spring.
Yeah.
I'd go with bulb planting. I'd go with spring.
It probably, though, is fair to say it's a bit skewed for us. We work at Google. We're AI leaders. A lot of our customers are by default early adopters, and they've been doing it for a while now. But that is just a sliver of the industry, right? And so you mentioned Monzo, Starling, Revolut, you touched on with user experience. Their big example is fraud detection. Yeah. And that was one of the reasons many years ago they started to really engage with our AI teams. And so it is super exciting. And if you look at the cross-section of different speakers and attendees here, we have Alexa in attendance, Fumo Pay, we have Compliant Advantage speaking tomorrow, we had Synergy Bank on with Nick.
Yeah, they were great. Yeah.
So, that's our ecosystem, and they're pretty well entrenched, but maybe it's the spring, maybe it's the early days, but let's get into some competitive advantages and the strategy side of things here, if we could, Georgina. What unique competitive advantages do financial services gain from adopting these capabilities? We've talked about the what, but how is that impacting? What are their advantages?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and I think this is a wonderful community to be embracing that, because FinTechs are very much at the forefront of that, because their data is often in a much readier state to be able to to really get the benefit of these technologies. I work with many historic institutions, is maybe another way to phrase it, across multi-jurisdictions, and that can be challenging because they're getting their data readiness, their foundations into place, they're aggregating the data, getting it AI ready. And in terms of competitive advantages, the way I think about this really is speed, right, and accuracy and time to get advantages to customers. And if you think about that kind of classic Logan's Run analogy, you've got maybe a cloud native firm who's just 1% quicker, but as time moves on, that advantage really accelerates. And some of these businesses are showing exponential growth in customer numbers, in that hyper-personalized experience. They're running their digital native infrastructure with very low employee numbers, not having to deal with a lot of historic institutional challenges, shall we say. So I think it's a really exciting inflection moment, actually, where if you are adopting this quickly and you're getting around it in the right way with your governance and your frameworks, it can be a true competitive advantage. And that's the exciting moment. That's when you start getting those customer numbers up, and you start seeing the growth and people start switching. And that's really what you want to be activating as a fintech.
You've tweaked a memory when you're talking about these high growth customers.
Yeah.
And, one of them that in itself is not a fintech, but it's one that fintechs are using is called Lovable. Why?
Yeah.
So many of you have heard of Lovable. Their TLDR, too long don't read, is they went from 0 to 100 million ARR in 8 months.
Yeah.
With, this is the kicker, 37 engineers. And they were able to do that because of AI, and specifically, and because we're Google, I have to say, with Vertex AI from Google Cloud. So it's amazing what can be possible when you really embrace Gen AI.
Yeah.
100%. And we could spend the next 13 minutes going through more and more case studies. But let's get to some more questions here. Okay. So let's build on the fire theme that I brought to the table. But before I do, I don't want to forget this. We do have 4 other Googlers here in the room. If you have questions after this session, we don't have enough time for a Q&A. We have Katarina, Narinder, Rich, and Karen. If you guys could just wave your hands. So do find them if you have some questions afterwards and want to engage. So the fire theme. It was back in 2021 that Sundar said to the Times, and I have to read this, AI is one of the most profound things we are working on as humanity. It's more profound than fire or electricity. Pretty intense. And to put it in scale for the vision, it was actually well before Sundar said that, our CEO. At 2016, he actually declared Google would be an AI-first company before we were a mobile-first company. Mm-hmm. So that's some pretty impressive vision that's coming true today. Let's move from vision to execution. What would you say, Georgina, are the critical operational and technological prerequisites for successfully implementing Gen AI solutions?
Yeah, I mean, the audience will be very familiar with this. There's quite a technical audience here today. I'm very aware of that. So obviously there's the data readiness piece and making sure that your data is ready to be AI enabled. There's having the correct AI DevOps tools on top of that. What we use, as Derek was just touching on there, is our Vertex AI tool that has in a Google speak, a model garden. And Google's philosophy is open source. So you go in there and you select the model that is appropriate for your business need. Okay, and that's a really, really important point, no matter who you buy your technology from. You must always use the model that is appropriate to the business use case, that's the right size. These can be expensive models to run. So think about whether you need a tiny gecko, as we call it, or a massive bison, or a huge unicorn is one of our biggest models. But we offer Anthropic, we offer Claude, we offer all the models that you would want to use on our garden. And that's very important, because it's important that the customer is in control. Now, a really key aspect to also having obviously your data and AI governance correctly is making sure you have the risk and compliance frameworks around that. And that may sound surprising coming from a technologist, but I also used to be a director of risk and compliance. And it's actually really important to have these things in place as you are starting your AI journey. You don't want to be catching up and bringing your second and third lines with you when you've already instilled this stuff. You want to make sure that you're going to get your 3 lines of review, your assurance and your audit fully in place when you are deploying. And that's very, very important from an educational perspective, so people understand what these tools do, what they don't do, what their limitations are. Whether it's deterministic or generative, it's much easier from a deterministic perspective, obviously, but in a generative basis, people need to understand what they are using. And I think, also culture is huge. right? It's a big cultural shift for employees, and people have talked about this today, and that's really about making sure that your employees are educated but also supported through the change. It's a huge change management process, and it's not about sprinkling a little bit of AI fairy dust across everyone's, PCs and saying, go and have some fun with it. It's about enabling them and giving them confidence to use these tools to drive business value. And you need to measure that. And I do think that's another really important aspect of this, Derek, is that, I could do stuff that's intellectually interesting all day long. But actually, what are you trying to instill in your workforce? Is it to create time for creativity, for business development? Is it to create more time for face-to-face interactions with customers? What is it that you're trying to create space for, and make sure that's being measured and actualized? Yeah.
Very interesting. Culture is key. Customer in control, which is a segue to control of data, maybe. And I'd love to just dig into that a little bit to get some thoughts on how do organizations looking to embrace Gen AI come up with the right data and governance model to make sure that their starting point is sound.
Yeah, no, of course. And with all of these models, you want to make sure that the access to your data is in your tenant, that it is the data you want to be used, that it is secure by design, you have all the right things in place in terms of tight access protocols, that you're mapping your access protocols, that they're being continuously monitored, data is encrypted at rest, at use, in transit, all of these things that may sound like hygiene, but in the world of AI are more important than ever, actually. And whichever provider you are using, Google Cloud, you benefit from our billions of dollars of investment because we have the same security protocols as Alphabet. So that is a huge democratization, actually. As a small fintech, you're able to tap into the security investment we're making across our entire platform if you use our cloud. But just really invest time in that, because that whole security piece is an enormous aspect of getting your customers trust confident too, as well as your internal teams, but also importantly the regulator, right? You're going to use these tools, the regulator, you need to be able to sit opposite them and say, I know what I'm doing, I know what this is being used for, I have confidence it's being used in the right way, and I can explain it, right? It's explainable, it's fair, and I'm not encouraging bias in the system. So lots of different aspects of it, Derek, but it's, as I say, from my perspective, that is foundational in it. This is not a tech project.
Yeah.
This is business, risk, and technology all working together.
Yeah. And just thinking maybe holistically into the challenges and the governance topic, you've touched on the regulatory element. How many, if you were to put the hurdles into two groups, I guess regulatory would be one, what would the other be?
I think the ethical considerations are really important. And I'm sure you all feel this as well, actually, in your lives as much as in your business lives, just considering how to deploy these tools in a way that aligns to your ethical values, aligns to your frameworks. We have, many years ago, devised our 7 AI principles, which we use every day in terms of looking at our application of AI. There are certain applications of AI which Google does not engage in, very deliberately, because they don't pass our principles. But they are things like, not to generate or encourage bias in the data, make sure that we meet the highest scientific principles, we cause no harm. But these things are really, really important. And I think that ethical consideration piece is something you have to continually come back to. When you're sitting in your exco committees for your fintech, think about how we're using this. Is this being used? Is this AI for good, right? Is this minimizing my risk, optimizing my business, minimizing cost, but done in a transparent way? And the regulatory aspects, the truth is the regulators are really keen to learn to lean in an enormous amount across the world, actually. We work with HSBC as an example, 53 different regulatory bodies they have to deal with, an incredible task, but we do all of their global liquidity reporting, and they have to make sure that that's done in a way that, again, is auditable, assurable, transparent, and you have these practical tools like continuous monitoring, human in the loop, all these things to help you, and the regulators want you to use all those tools, and I think that can be actually a very positive conversation with the regulator, because they're trying to use it too, they're all adopting it as well. Yeah.
All right. So we have about 5 minutes left, and so we have to pivot into the vision and looking a bit forward now.
Okay.
So it's time for the crystal ball to come out. Looking ahead, 3-5 years, And in this space, looking at 3-5 months is a
I'm
challenge.
thinking like 1 year, Derek.
But if you could be specific where possible, and perhaps even futuristic in your ideas,
Okay.
What excites you the most about Gen AI and financial services in 3 to 5 years?
3 to 5 years. Okay. Gosh. Well,
What does that look like?
great question. So I think when I think about AI applications today, obviously we have more of the traditional AI, which you're all familiar with. You know, it comes all the way through from the machine learning through to quite a straightforward chatbot. We're then starting to see the advent of vertical AI agents. That's an agent being built for a specific purpose. Okay, so it might be being built specifically to review documentation for a KYC process. But the future moves beyond that vertical agent into effectively a multi-orchestrated agentic system, which is a lot of fancy words, which basically means you have a string of agents across a system working together collaboratively, right? If you think about a workflow, so if you thought about wealth management, okay, you would have an agent at the start that was thinking about that kind of analysis. So actually, what's the customer opportunity? What's the market? What's the news? That's the synthesis of intelligence, and that would be your initial agent that's saying, what's this market opportunity? How does that look? That would then roll into probably a risk agent, which is trying to understand the risk parameters of investment for that wealth management customer. What does that look like? What are the historic trends that you could incorporate into the risk profile? What are the ones you could forecast model? Because that's the wonderful thing about these models. They can do almost endless Monte Carlo what-if scenarios with static data. It's fascinating. And then you would have your client-facing agent. So that's feeding, that's translating all these different inputs, you know, from the customer analysis, the risk analysis, and it's creating that hyper-personalized experience. So if it was you as the customer, we'd be coming to you saying, actually, Derek, we've done all of this analysis. We think this is the right framework for you, the right hedging strategy for you, the right considerations around your family. And you would have a very highly experienced analyst reviewing that. I'm not suggesting even in the future that the human comes out. I'm not. But I think it is a democratization of deep thinking. You know, be that quant analysis in the middle, be that the assimilation of enormous amounts of different forms of multimodal information at the start. But it is empowering you to have a really high quality conversation with your customer around their wealth management needs. And I think that interoperability is key, and I think that is what we will see. And I think it is most importantly ensuring that we put the right governance and culture around all of that, so that is a good experience for businesses and for customers. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does quite a bit.
I mean, you're in the space as well. What do you think?
At any point, though, in that future vision you're describing, you're not saying the human is completely out of the experience from a wealth management perspective. And that ties into what Nick Fahey from Synergy Bank
was talking about,
the human digital story. So yeah, that makes really good sense. So I've got a problem. I've got two really good questions in my mind, but we don't have that much time, so I have to think. Right. Maybe the next one could be a super short answer, and then we can pivot to freestyle on the last one.
I'll try.
Okay, penultimate. If you could give one piece of advice to other fintech leaders who are just starting to scale with Gen AI and they're on the journey, the beginning of that journey, what advice would that be?
I would say don't get distracted by the hype and pick the thing that will have the highest business value for your business. It's not the shiniest object. It is the hardest problem to solve, or the problem that you can use this technology to crack and unlock.
Perfect. And you have started to answer this next and final question already, so but you can, I no doubt, put some more around it. And it's on a personal note. Are you ready?
Okay.
You have, in all seriousness, you do have a unique perspective, former CEO of a major bank, and now at Google as a global director. We've covered the tech and the regulation, but what about the people? What's the single biggest cultural or workforce challenge you see financial institutions facing when AI moves from experiment mode to full-on culture production mode?
I would say it's the behavioral psychology component, right? So it's the fear that we all have of change and of something that is so powerful. And we don't know where it's all going to go, right? We just don't know. So I think that as a people leader, what I would say, I've thought about this a lot, actually. There's kind of 3 core components that I think people need to lean into with their teams and actually also with themselves. The first of which is just education, right? When people are afraid, the way through that is knowledge, okay? So it's educating people around what the technology is, what it can do, and also what it can't do, okay? Its limitations. I go to 2 hours of lectures a week at Google on AI because these models are advancing so fast. We have to educate ourselves constantly on it. I think that's a really, really important foundational component. The second thing that I think people need to not lose sight of is the need for supporting people in developing critical thinking skills and ethical judgment, right? Because actually, we got a lot of that through battle scars and years and years and years, 30 years in industry, right? But actually, critical thinking is an incredibly important thing for people to be considering how to build into their workforce and into their exco meetings and into their trainings with their younger people. And the third part, which is the most human part, actually touching on the way you framed that question, is communication and collaboration, right? All of these things are ultimately people businesses. So is Google, right? And one of the reasons I love working at Google is the people, right? Because we collaborate, we have a lot of fun, everyone's great communicators, and if you're not having a great communication day, that's okay. But actually just thinking about how to communicate and evolve through that together. People have tremendously successful careers built on soft skills. So I still believe there is a huge role for that to play, Derek. And I think, particularly for young people, maybe I say this as a mum as well of teenagers, we need to help people develop those skills when they are learning a lot with machines. Does that make sense?
It does. So it means I don't need to retire just yet.
No,
There's
neither of us.
Space. Okay. Good. Thank you for making space for me. No, thank you for going through all of that, Georgina. Hopefully the online streaming doesn't break the internet because of the
You're hilarious.
The traffic, no doubt. We'll end with a call to action. And a lot of people have heard about Gemini and Nano Banana, but if you haven't tried Notebook LM, one food for thought we'll leave you with. The CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen, I just go by his first name because we're friends.
Quite a lot of speakers have done that today.
Yeah.
They've been like, Jensen.
Yeah, me and Jensen,
Okay.
He was telling me the other day that on his way into work, he loads all the activities he has, all the meetings, all the notes for that day into Notebook LM.
Yeah,
and then he
every day.
has Notebook LM spill out in a summary of what he has to do and gives him some background. So try Notebook LM. There's a call to action. But Georgina, thank you very much. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, thank you very much.